I want to kind of start this thing off by asking, what is it specifically? I'm just going to go over some stuff, but I need to know what it is specifically that you want me to just be sure I'm covering, so that I want to know specifically what to go over, just to make sure I'm getting your questions answered, and then from there I'll just kind of do my thing, and then you interrupt me. I want this to be more for you, is the point. So if it's more Q&A, that's going to be more helpful for me. Make sure you guys get what you want to get. You know, I'm sure for Corey and Leah, probably for most of you, you're just like, I don't know what to ask. Just give me whatever.
Yeah.
But some of you probably have specific questions, and I know that one of those questions is how to make a 3-tiered offer. So we're definitely going to be talking about that. What else?
That's same as a sandwich lease.
No, the 3-tier offer is what
Cash.
Chase was talking about earlier.
Just offering.
Yeah, it's
Making
just,
an offer.
yeah, it's different.
That's it.
than-
Oh, okay, all right, 3-tiered offer.
That is it.
Yeah,
What else?
yeah, so I guess I did want to know about a sandwich
Sandwich lease
lease.
option, sandwich lease, whatever forms you have, you
We were
can
reading
share.
your Flips for Fortune book about that, and that's
Subject to,
subject to, yeah.
is that not the same?
30-minute video on YouTube that I explain it perfectly. Go watch that.
Okay.
All right.
I've already linked it up. It's on my personal page from about a week ago. I linked it up again. It's one of the most viewed subject to videos on all of YouTube. Like it's got like 100 and something likes and like it's like industry leaders very like, this is
And
awesome.
that's on YouTube, you said? It is?
Yep, and I linked it up on my personal Facebook page like a week ago,
Okay.
maybe 2, so you can just go to that.
Okay.
But yeah, that's going to be. If I talk about subject 2, we'll be here for an hour and a half just talking about that.
No, that's fine, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. And then, of course, we were talking about the sandwich because we thought that's what this was that I was working on, was a sandwich of some sort, but see, it's not. And so after reading it, we're going, okay, this is it. But since it's not it,
No, I'll go over the sandwich. What else? What else specifically? Otherwise, I'm just going to talk.
Well, let's just say start with that, and then we'll ask questions as we go along, we don't understand it.
yeah, just maybe some simple, different
Did you have
techniques.
something you want to go over there?
Yeah, I don't even know how to even engage in the conversation about an option.
Okay, so how to bring up the conversation, like how to talk to the seller.
And just maybe some basic, just 2 or 3 basic, really good techniques that we can use in, today. And that way, if we have questions, we can always come back to you and get in-depth, we can get more in-depth at another meeting, but maybe just going over some
Oh, yeah.
that we can like, okay, well, y'all are post-selling, y'all are, you're looking for this. These are really good. So we're learning it from Flips for Fortune. And then obviously, my looking at Flips for Fortune going, oh, this is a sandwich and I'm totally wrong, then therefore I don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So, yep, some real world examples.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, so we'll talk about these 3 things. Let's do this. We'll do this first. We can do this second, and we can do this third. Again, feel free. This is super casual. Feel free to jump in, chime in, ask questions. This is for you. Okay. And before I get going, excuse me, is everybody in the? I've invited most of you, I think, in the group, the Facebook private group. I linked up the entire Flips to Fortune presentation for lease options. So a lot of what I'm about to tell you, and I know this sounds, I don't know if, because I've said this a bunch, and I don't know if it's resonated, or if you don't believe me or what, but for the most part, I don't have anything more to teach than what I teach at the seminar. Like maybe I can fill in a few gaps, which I'm definitely going to try to do, but I give you pretty much everything I have. So that lease option presentation, like I'm literally going to go, I literally just got the book because I'm going to go through it point by point. And so in this exact same presentation, everything I'm about to say as far as lease options goes is all on the Flips to Fortune videos that I linked up, okay? And at the seminars. Okay, so let's talk about lease option. Let's talk about what a sandwich lease option is. This is what I call a traditional lease option, because there are, I just want to go get this, just so I can show it to you. Hold on one second.
Well, we all do. Minimum of 7, it's a minimum of 7, so you're right, and then secondly, you've heard that. But the thing is that I've got 2 contracts right here that I don't know what to do with, so. Yeah,
Did you my lease option book?
Did I borrow it? Yes, you loaned it to me.
Okay.
You need to bring it back, now?
Okay, I was just going to show everybody the lease option
I
book.
have a lease option book that belongs to Brian that's about this thick.
Okay, well, I just want to show everybody, the only point I was trying to make is, don't forget to bring it back.
Okay.
But the point I'm trying to make is, in that book, I got that, it's a manual from Rich Dad Education when I went through the Rich Dad program. That manual has in it over 20 different ways to do a lease option. Okay? Over 20 different ways to do a lease option. There's probably even more than that. But this is the 20 ways that they have, hey, here's 20 different creative ways that you could do a lease with the option to buy it in all different types of situations and scenarios. What I'm going to talk about is what I consider to be the traditional lease option. Just when someone says, hey, will you do a lease option? This is typically what they're talking about. They're talking about the sandwich lease option. So just to break it down, simple form. 1, there's a lease, because it's a lease option, right? What's a lease?
Rent.
You're renting, okay? So there's a lease with the option to buy. But who are you? If you're leasing this property from a potential seller, you are a tenant, right? Now, if you exercise, you have the option to buy it. If you do exercise your option, then you are a buyer. But you're not a buyer yet, and you may never be a buyer. You are a tenant because you're leasing it, which means you have how much ownership?
0.
Do you have equitable interest?
No.
No, correct. You have no equitable interest. 0. You are a tenant. If someone rents one of my houses, do they have equitable interest in it? Heck no. They are renting. Okay? In a lease option scenario, you are a tenant. Now, yes, someone said tenant buyer. You are a tenant hyphen buyer. You could be a buyer, but you're a tenant. Okay, so you need to understand that first and foremost that when you're talking to a seller about a potential lease option, you're talking to them about, hey, what if I just rented it from you? And then I've got the option to buy it, later on down the road in exchange for X, some sort of consideration. So that's first and foremost. There's a lease. You have the option to buy it. So you're going to lease this from the seller, right? Or in this particular scenario, the landlord. 2, you are then going to sublease it. Sell it?
No.
Sublease it. Everyone knows what that means, right?
To rent to someone else.
You, as the tenant, and it's in the contract, it's in your lease, it gives you the authority and the right to sublease it. You can lease it to someone else. So if you lease it from the owner for, let's say, $700 a month, I can potentially sublease it for $1,000 a month. What have I done in this scenario? I've created some what?
Cash flow.
I've created some cash flow. It's called arbitrage. Okay, I don't own anything, but I'm taking a middleman cut. I'm taking a middleman cut of this deal. Okay? Everybody follow that so far?
I have a question.
So, yep.
How do you get them to let you rent it for less money than what you could sublease it for?
Okay. Write that question down, because we're getting to it. But write it down so I don't forget it. So you don't forget it. We're getting to that. I just want to go through the step-by-step process here. You're going to lease it from a seller, and then you're going to turn around and sublease it to a potential who?
Buyer. Renter.
Tenant.
Tenant buyer.
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to sublease it to a tenant. Hopefully, they are going to become the buyer. okay? You're doing this, again, this is a sandwich lease option. You're doing this to try to sell the property, right? You're gonna buy it and then turn around and sell it. You're gonna exercise your option, and then they're gonna exercise their option at the same closing. Make sense? That's the goal. Why would someone do something like this? If you're the subleasee, you're a tenant buyer, and you're gonna come to somebody like me who has a property, why would a tenant buyer want to do something like this?
Don't have the cash.
Don't have any
Credit.
Don't have a credit? They've gotta have a little bit of cash, because I'm not gonna put them in the property without a little bit of cash. But typically, they don't have the credit to be able to qualify for their own loan. So they gotta do something a little bit more. They gotta do something a little bit more creatively to get into a house, to get into home ownership. Because eventually, we want to help them become homeowners. Now, there are a couple of companies in Birmingham who focus solely on this. And one of them, I don't know if you guys have had a chance to meet Antonio and Ashley Denmark. Denmark Properties. They're who Antonio bought the house in Pleasant Grove from you, and he bought it with the intent. He fixed it up. He's putting a tenant buyer in it, and then he sells it to them. They fix their credit, and they end up getting their own loan in about 8 to 10 months. So that's a sandwich lease option. That's what they do. They do sandwich lease options all day long. They lease it from someone else, or in this scenario, they actually bought it. So I guess it's not technically a sandwich lease option. But in a sandwich lease option scenario, you never buy the property. You lease it from the seller, you sublease it to a tenant, and then number 3, so hold on real quick. So you typically, when you have the option to buy, that price that you negotiate, I typically negotiate it for close to market, but not market. Okay? I'll negotiate that. Still want to get a deal, but this is a way we can offer more for the property, but not typically maybe like 90%.
Of market at
So-
the time of the option?
Yes, but to hedge myself against depreciation, I like to actually put, because I've never done this in a scenario where they don't owe on the property. So if I usually do it for the amount they owe, like that's the purchase price. I usually do it for the amount they owe. The reason I do that is there's a lot, and surely you guys have been on appointments where the cash offer is going to be 60, but they owe 80. The cash offer would be way below what they actually owe. So we would do a scenario like this. Well, what if I leased it from you for a year or two, and then cashed you out after a year? I continue to help you make the payment.
Can we just use one of my scenarios since one of mine is like that?
We can in just 1 second.
Oh, okay.
I just want to get through these 3. Let me get through these 3. Okay. So owes too much, so I'm going to put the option, the amount to buy it for what they owe. Right?
Okay.
That's what so there's 2 documents. When I talk to there's 2 documents, and here there's 2 documents. What are the 2 documents?
A lease.
A lease?
And an option.
And a contract to purchase that has an option component. Okay? A purchase contract with an option component. And a lease. 2 separate documents. Same thing in this scenario. They are subleasing it. There is a lease. And then there is a second component, a contract to purchase with an option component. Okay? The only way they can, get the property is if they exercise their option to buy it. So they have a certain amount of time period to do that. Okay? Does that make sense so far?
Mm-hmm.
What is the amount I put here? How much they're going to buy it for? I've got this how much I'm going to buy it for. How much are they going to buy it for?
Okay, Brian, what they owe, is that like your 90%?
No.
So let's just pretend that the house is worth $100,000 and they owe 80. But my cash offer, because it needs a little bit of work, my cash offer is going to be 60.
Okay.
I can't buy it for 60 because they can't accept that offer.
Right.
They owe 80.
Right.
So I'm going to buy it for what they owe, which is 80.
Okay.
But I actually phrase it that I'm gonna buy it for what they owe at the time of that I exercise my option to purchase it, because they're gonna be paying down the note.
Right.
And I wanna take advantage of that equity.
Right.
So what they owe, what am I gonna sell it for? Somebody said it. Market. Yep. Market value. And I'm actually gonna put that in my contract, my purchase contract with the option. I'm not gonna put a number. What am I gonna put?
Market.
I'm gonna put appraised value at time of purchase. They are going to buy it for whatever the appraisal says it's worth. Full market value, full appraised value. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So there are 3 different ways to make money in a lease option scenario. Number 1, the equity difference. You guys see it? There's going to be a difference in equity. I'm selling it for market, for appraised value, but I'm buying it for what they owe. So if it appraises for 100, and by the time these guys exercise their option, or I exercise my option, they owe 70,
You've got 30,000.
that's $30,000 in equity that goes where?
To you.
To you.
So there's 3 different profit centers. One is the equity. You guys see that?
Yep.
Number 2 is what?
The,
$300
The
extra.
cash flow, the monthly cash flow. And then number 3, hang on, we haven't got to it yet. You guys are probably already there, you're probably already ahead of me. There's 3-step process to a sandwich lease option. We're gonna lease it, we're going to sublease, lease it from the seller, sublease it to the hopefully tenant buyer, to the buyer. And then number 3 is you actually you sell it. You buy it and sell it. Okay? You buy it, then you sell it. So at the time that the subleasee, the tenant buyer, you sign all the paperwork with them, they are going to put down what?
Down payment.
Option
Option
consideration.
That's right. They're going to put down some option consideration money. Okay?
When they exercise their option.
No,
No.
when they first go into the property.
Yeah, first do it.
This is in exchange for the option. So I'm gonna answer, anytime you enter into an agreement, like if I'm going to if the seller is gonna give me the option to buy it, I have to give him something in return. And that's called consideration. What I typically give in consideration is I either catch up late payments or I say I'm responsible for all the repairs from here on. That's what I give in consideration. What the tenant buyer is going to give me for consideration is cash. How much cash, Brian? How much cash should they give you? What do you think's the answer to that?
10%.
Negotiable.
Totally negotiable.
Yeah.
What do you think would be a good number?
$5 grand.
10 grand.
depends on the price of the
Yeah.
house.
Well, it definitely depends on the price of the house.
Yeah,
So let's say it's a $100,000 house.
okay.
How much should they be giving
But
me?
if they don't have the 20% to go buy it, they don't have the credit.
They don't have the credit. They could have the 20%.
So they could have the 20%. So again, negotiable, you guys, so
You
how much do you
gotta ask them
have?
how much you have, yeah.
Well, I don't want to take all their
It
money.
could be as little as $100 if you.
No,
if that's
definitely
acceptable.
don't want to do that.
Yeah.
No, just.
So here's what you have to ask yourself, because there's no way I can actually answer this question
Yeah.
for any of us. Here's what you would have to ask about this scenario. What if all the wheels fall off this wagon? And what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst case scenario in this situation?
Market crashes, tenants leave.
Okay, I don't think that's the worst case scenario. What's the worst case scenario?
House burns
House burns
down.
down.
Okay, you got insurance, so I don't think that's the worst case scenario.
Walk away.
Who walks away?
The tenant.
You,
It's
so
the
you're
tenant.
in the middle. You just don't exercise your option.
That's not the worst case scenario.
No.
Me walking away is not the worst case scenario.
Living or not.
What can actually happen to me? Where's the risk in this? Where can I lose a lot of money?
So
You can't sublease it. Tenant walks out.
Okay, talk more.
The tenant leaves and doesn't pay or they destroy the house.
Correct. That's the worst case scenario.
Okay.
That the tenant doesn't pay and they absolutely destroy a house that you don't own.
And you promise to be made.
That's the worst. Yeah, you promised to do all the fix up.
Gotcha.
That's the worst case scenario.
Okay.
I don't care if the market crashes because what? I've got an option to buy it. Do I have to buy it?
No.
I can walk away.
Yeah.
Right.
The worst case scenario is not me walking away. Sometimes that's the best case scenario, because I get to walk away. But the worst case scenario is, what if I do a bad job of my due diligence and I put the worst tenant possible in there? They tear it up, they don't pay, and they're
And it takes you 6 months to get them out.
and I gotta go through an eviction to get them out.
Uh-huh.
That's the worst case scenario.
Mhm.
How much will that cost you?
Okay.
5.
So you
Do you see where I'm going with this?
So always you've got to crunch that and think of that and see what that number is. And unless they have that, for you, it's a no deal.
For me, it's a no deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you have to personally weigh what it could cost in a worst case scenario versus, because you're not going to get that whole dollar amount, because that could cost $10,000. It could cost $15,000. It could cost a heck of a lot of money. You're probably not going to be able to charge that much, or you would never get anybody in that house as an option consideration money. Typically, I'll go somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 on a $100,000 house, somewhere between 5 and 10%. You know, today you talked about 20%. Nobody has to pay 20% down anymore. That's old. There are loans out there. If you're BA, you can get 0 down. If you're FHA, 3% or 1 point whatever it is. I don't. See, you see where I'm going with this? So there's the option consideration money, which is the third profit center. Oops, there's 3. But oh my gosh, I just kicked it. What's wrong with me? It's like trying to catch a ping pong ball. Have you ever tried to catch a ping pong?
Yeah.
Like I tried to catch a ping pong ball, and after I got married, it like hits my ring and it just goes flying. I try to catch it. Sorry.
Yeah.
So the third thing, you're gonna lease it and sublease it, and then you're gonna buy and resell. You're gonna buy this. Once the tenant buyer is ready to exercise their option, you have to buy it first, because you can't sell it because you don't own
Because
it.
you don't own it. Yeah.
So you got a double close situation going on here, where you're gonna buy it with their money and then sell it back to them, just like a double close in a wholesale deal. Does everybody understand the basics of a sandwich lease option? Why is it called a sandwich?
Because you're in the middle.
You're right.
Because you're in the middle. You're in the middle of the transaction. Do you ever own anything?
No.
No.
You control it. The best way to make money in real estate, the quickest and fastest and easiest way to make money in real
Own nothing,
estate,
control everything.
is to own nothing, control everything.
Teacher's pet.
That's straight from Rich Dad. That's straight from Rich Dad Poor Dad.
You got that from JP Morgan.
What were the?
Makes sense.
You had a question. I want to make sure.
Well, I think you answered it. I was asking, how did you get down to 700 or cheaper than market rent so that you could rent it for?
Oh, right. So here's the thing. So, are we going behind the seller's back and
No.
he doesn't know anything about this?
No, because it's a clause in the contract.
Of course not. The seller has to know exactly what we're doing, and the seller has to be completely on board with it. If they're not on board with it, you can't do it.
But you're helping him get out of a situation. he
Totally.
can't
Totally. So I've got to tell him straight up, just like my house, I don't know if you guys remember the house I have on Eric Drive in Irondale. Just like this house, I told the guy, and that's where I use these numbers. His mortgage payment was I can go get it $760 something.
Yeah, he
Mhm.
$63 check.
And I rent it for actually $995, but basically $1,000. I'm like, I cannot do this deal if I don't have a $300 cash flow gap. Otherwise, I don't have enough money. What happens if the worst case scenario happens? I don't have enough money to fix something if it breaks. I've got to have that buffer so I can fix something. You would want me to fix things in your house, right? In case the worst thing happens. So I'm like, the only way I can do this deal is you would literally have to like give me the difference every month. And he writes me a check every single month for $69.70 whatever cents. Just so I have this $300 buffer. Okay?
And Brian, when you
So, just real quick, just to make sure I've answered your question. He knows what I'm doing. He knows I'm subleasing it. I've got to make money here to protect him, to protect his house, and they're on board.
I was with that overage, I mean that shortage of $69. You said everything's negotiable at all times. How did you go back? What was the conversation when you back to tell the guy?
I didn't go back. I told it to him right to his face, right then and there. I'm like, market rent's gonna be $1,000, and your payment's $769. Like, I the only way I could do, like, I told him everything that I'm looking to do.
Mm-hmm.
He's 2 months behind on his mortgage. I'm gonna catch up your mortgage.
Right.
It's $5,000 worth of work to
So
the
at
house.
that point, it's
I'm
a
gonna fix the
no-brainer.
house.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fix the house for you.
Mhm.
I'm gonna put tenants in here, and then I need a 5-year option.
Yeah.
I negotiate a 5-year option.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way, everything I just laid out for you sound good? Sound like something you'd want to do? Here's the thing: I can't even do it unless I have $300 gap and market rent's $1,000, and your payment's $769. You would literally have to pay me $69 every single month
Because you're making the mortgage payment.
to make sure. Yeah, I'm making his mortgage payment.
Okay. I got you. Yeah. I mean, you're helping him out, and he knows that, and so he's going to do that, no problem.
And you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about it.
And that's where you got the limited POA?
Correct.
In the region.
Okay, you said there was 2 documents.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please, go ahead.
Or you had said that there were 2 documents with the lease, with the option to buy. And that was the lease and then the purchase contract with the option component. And then you said that there was 2 documents on the sublease, but you never went back.
It's the same
It's the
thing.
same
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same 2 documents.
Okay,
It's
okay.
the same 2
All right,
documents.
all right.
There's a lease and an option to buy from the seller. There's a lease and the option to buy from me, the seller.
Okay, all right.
So what about that, when the house is way too overpriced? But the,
Way too overpriced for market or for our cash offer?
for market?
Like they're asking more than what it's actually worth?
Yeah, they owe more than what it's worth.
Okay, so if they owe more than what it's worth, you can still. Okay. I would ask the question, why do you want to do that deal if they owe more than what it's worth? Unless if they're not willing to come to the table with money. I'm trying, how can we help them?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
So
Sure so.
you can do this if, so it's risk reward for you the investor. We're not in this business to be charity. We do want to help people, but we can't help people to the point to where it hurts us.
Right.
Okay, so I'll give you one scenario. House over here on 5 Mile Road that I bought subject to the existing financing. He owed exactly what it was worth. Actually, it owed a little bit more than what it was worth. The appraisal at the time came in at like $55,000. He owed like $58,000, but it was in perfect condition, immaculate condition, and his payment was $400 something a month. That includes taxes and insurance, and I knew I could rent it for $850. So there's a good cash flow gap there. House is in perfect condition. Put brand new roof, brand new HVAC, like new flooring, new paint. Like the house is in great condition. 2-car garage. I knew I could rent it. I knew there was a good gap there where I could make some cash flow, and if I could pay down that mortgage for 5 years, or in a subject to scenario, it could be forever. But if I could pay down that mortgage, that's me going out and getting a mortgage on a house at basically market, maybe a little bit more than market, but basically market, and I didn't have to qualify for the loan. I didn't have to put anything down. I literally went to the closing table and paid $882.50 because that's how much it cost for the closing. That was the closing cost. So in a scenario like that, I did it. Again, risk versus reward. What's the upside? Today it appraised for $65,000 and there's about $49,000 owed on it because I've been paying it down. So, and it's been rented to the same people for over 3 years. So, risk versus reward. Now, is it a $500,000 house and they owe $600,000 on it, and the payment is $1,500 and the rent is $1,500? Those numbers don't make any sense,
Right.
and it needs $10,000 worth of work. Those numbers don't make any sense whatsoever.
Right.
So you have to weigh it. You have to figure out, what are the actual numbers? Is it worth 100 and they owe 110 and it needs $30,000 worth of work? You see what I'm saying? You have to weigh it.
Okay.
If it makes sense, then you could do a subject to potentially, maybe a lease option. It just depends. It just depends on a lot of stuff. The big difference for me is time. If they don't care at all, then I'll do a subject to.
Yeah, they don't care at all.
Because I'll do a subject to and I'll pay the loan down forever, right? For the life of the loan. In a scenario like this, he didn't want to do this for long. He wanted the thing out of his name in like 2 years. And I said, it's got to be 5. And he said, all right. But I've got a 5-year window for this, so I couldn't do a subject to because the subject to could be for the life of the loan. Lease option, my option period is 5 years, which I have 2.5 years left on.
I thought a subject to was a lease option.
Nope. Buying a house subject to the existing financing. That means the financing is already in place and you are actually taking ownership of the house. You are buying the house.
Or their
Taking over their payments.
Without telling them what.
I have title to that house. Title's in my name.
Okay.
That's not what's going on here. I don't have title to this house. I'm leasing the house.
Right. Yeah, I understand that.
Okay, what else? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, well, I'll talk to you more about it. Because the rent is like $430
The payment is?
the payment is $430 with insurance.
How much work does it need is the big question for this.
It's gonna need to get it rent ready or to
Rent ready.
maybe 15.
Yeah, see, in a scenario like this, lease option, subject to, sandwich lease option, I don't want to go in and do a bunch of work. The purpose of these is obviously you're trying to help somebody. The purpose of this for you, the investor, is to get into a property cheap.
Right.
Really cheap. So if you got $15,000 worth of work,
$1,500.
oh, 50, I thought you said 15,000.
No.
Then that's something I might entertain if it's in a good area and there's a good spread. Yep. So any other questions about this? Our next obvious place I feel like we need to go is, well, how do we talk to a seller about this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we approach a seller in a scenario like this?
Is it 3-tiered off?
Does anybody have any questions so far before we move on to that second part? Okay. And we can do, if we've got time, I gotta kind of be done by noon, so we got a full hour left. If we've got time, we'll go through specific scenarios. We'll go through specific case study.
Do you have templates, contract templates for options and?
So again, I do. Yes, I do, and I think I've sent them. I think you have them, or I've sent them to a bunch of you.
You have?
Okay. Yes, I do. You got to be very careful with this stuff.
I'm not saying I'm gonna use them as a look,
Well,
but I wanna look at it.
No, totally. And yes, I've got access to anything that you guys need, 100% for sure. No question about
Yeah,
it.
definitely wanna look at
For
it.
stuff like this, you gotta be super careful. Like when you start getting the general public involved in things, you're starting to go in and negotiating with people who are gonna live in this thing, you are now heavily regulated.
Mm-hmm.
You have now put yourself in a position where you've opened yourself up to being heavily regulated. When you're working with investors, there pretty much are no regulations. Okay? But when you're talking about owner-occupied people, you're heavily regulated. So that's why I highly suggest you don't do this on your own. Okay. So how do we approach a seller with a situation like this? So Chase got to see this literally firsthand yesterday. Is exactly how I do it. I do it depending on what the needs of the seller is. So the first thing, anytime you're going on an appointment, I know we did that little sales thing back there in that room, where what to say on an appointment, all those kinds of things. Well, once you fully understand the situation, it is in your best interest, the investor, it's in your best interest to give a seller the best advice that you can give them for them. Not what works best for you, what works best for them. So perfect scenarios, yesterday I went on an appointment with Chase. I always ask the question, what's your timeline like? How quickly are you looking to sell? How quickly are you looking to move? I ask that, why do you think I asked that question?
And know if it motivated.
Or negotiation.
Motivation. Trying to figure out their motivation. That's it. I don't care. I couldn't care less about that they hate being there. That doesn't even matter if they hate being there. Like, unless they can actually do something about it, right? So I want to figure all that out by asking that question. What's your timeline like? Are you trying to get out in 2 weeks, trying to get out in 2 months? And when I asked that question, the guy's like, I hate being here. I don't like the area, but we could stay here forever if we had to. Is there any motivation there?
No.
There's no motivation, right? So makes a lot of money. He's a pharmacist. Makes really good money. He's been putting a lot of money into the house, and he was already telling me, I've already done all this, and then the next thing I'm going to do is this, 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 and this. So he's got all the money. He's fixing up the house himself. He's done, and time's not an issue to him. So how would you approach this situation?
Why are you selling?
But he doesn't want to be there. It's a bad area for him and his family. He wants to move to a different area, but he doesn't have to.
I guess to ask him what does he want? What's he looking for?
Why-
I mean, how can you look at
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So we're there. Look, this is him talking. This is my first chance that I haven't done anything. I haven't talked to anybody about this. I'm just trying to find more information. How would you approach it?
Have you thought about, but, are you, something about wanting to put it on the market with a realtor?
Okay.
I would ask that one.
Yep.
First, are you looking to work with a realtor with this?
Totally.
Or a different scenario?
So this is what I do. This is what I do 100% of the time on every appointment, and I think you've been on an appointment that you've all seen me do this because I do it every single time. I figure out in my mind what is best for him. What is best for the seller? You call us out here, we are investors. Obviously, we're in the business to make money. We can't offer you market value. They agree. I want them to agree to that. I want them to understand, yes, I know this. And by the way, before I get into this changes depending on the area too. It depends on not only the motivation of the seller, it depends on the area of the house as well. Like if this house, we were this house worth $130,000, $140,000, which is average sales price in the greater Birmingham area, right? So that's a good house, a solid house that could easily go on the MLS, right, and get offers. But if you're in Hueytown, parts of Hueytown, where the house is worth $60,000, $75,000, that's going to be more of a rental. It's going to be very difficult to put that on the MLS and get sales with it. You have to approach that more as an investor. Like his best option is to sell it to an investor in that scenario. Mm-hmm. In this scenario, where the house is worth roughly $130,000, his best scenario is what?
Put it on the market.
Fix it up, finish the repairs, fix it up, and put it on the market.
Mm-hmm.
I know this, right? I know this before I ever make him an offer, and so I want to list in my mind what are his options and rank them in order of what's best for him. What's best for us? Do we rank it in terms of what's best for us?
No.
No.
Because you'll lose the business.
You'll lose the business. You'll lose potential referrals.
Yeah.
It's not about you.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's the biggest thing that I think the mistake a lot of people make when they get into wholesaling is it's not about you at all. It is about the seller. It's about you helping people. Obviously, we're in the business to make money. We've got to make money. We're not a charity, but we're trying to help people. Because when you help people, you are going to end up doing way more business.
Oh yeah.
It's just a fact, and I'm living proof of it. So I want to rank what are his options, and then I want to rank them in my mind in order of what's best for him.
Put it on there in the list.
Okay? So in my mind, I came up with 4 options that could be best for him. The very first thing what do you think the very first thing I said to him was before I said anything about a cash offer?
Why are you so?
Why you selling the house?
I think your best option, Mr. Seller, is to put on the MLS. And he goes, well, you remember what his response was?
What is the MLS?
What's the MLS? I'm like, awesome. Let's
bring it down.
Let's bring it down to the where all the cookies are on the bottom shelf so everybody can understand. Let's talk about it. What's the MLS? How would you, if someone were to ask you what is that? How would you
That's where you list it with an agent.
It stands for.
but what's the MLS?
It's
Multiple listing
Multiple
service,
listings.
all agents use it.
What is it?
It's a central database that all real estate agents have access to find properties, that all the information about the houses in there and
House
asking
on the
clients,
market.
etc.
Yeah.
It's a huge database.
Totally. So, yep, and that's exactly what I tell them. I explain it to them. The MLS is the multiple listing service. It's where all the brokers get together and they put, instead of just, you've heard of Remax, right? You've heard of Century 21. You've heard of, Brick, Realty South, all these different brokerages. You've heard of 205 Realty, right? Of course. All these brokerages. It's where all the if they only had their houses for sale and they put them in a place, nobody would really know where they were. You'd have to, if you, the consumer, were trying to buy a house, you'd have to go here, 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 here. And there's actually hundreds of them in Birmingham, different brokerages. I just listed the big ones. So what they've done is all the brokers got together and they put them all in the same place, so to benefit you, the consumer. So not only when you're buying, but when you're selling as well. Because when you sell, like if you list, say, with 205 Realty, people from Brick, realtors from, Century 21, they can all see that listing. And they could bring a buyer to you. And not just my pool of buyers, you get everybody's pool of buyers. So that's why there's a huge benefit in putting it on MLS and listing it with a realtor, is because it's capitalism. It's getting it out to everybody where we can get you the most, where you got a lot of people competing for your house and we can get you the most for your house. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's what I want to do. You want the most for your house? Yes. Then you're going to have to fix a couple of things we'd already talked about. You're going to fix this. Yeah, I know. And to fix those things, and and we can list it for you for sure. There's no doubt about it. And you're going to have to pay some fees. Here's the downside to it. You're going to have to pay realtor fees. You're going to have to pay some closing costs, and you don't know when your house is going to sell. Okay, if those aren't a big deal to you, then we should list it. So he's like on board right off the bat. MLS. Okay. Do you understand? Do you have any questions about that? Do you want me to talk about maybe some other options? Because you've done, and I say this almost every time, because here's the thing, and I can't say this every time, by the way. I say this very rarely. But you've done a great job of, obviously you have a house in a great area, in a really good area, and you have options. You're not behind on your payments. You're not, the house isn't all tore up. You've got some money to invest back in the house to get all fixed up. You're in a great position. And when you set yourself up and put yourself in a great position, you've got options. You've got a lot of options. I can't tell you how many times I go to people's houses where they have one option. Like their back's up against the wall and all they can do is take my low cash offer. That's it. Well, let's talk about my low cash offer. Just so you have all of the data. You have a lot of options. I'm actually going to go through a few different options with you. Listing with MLS is in my opinion, is by far and away the best thing that you can do. But if time and convenience and speed is important to you, then you could go with an investor like us, where we're typically going to offer you 65% of what it's worth. That's just what I say. By the way, and I forgot to say this, before I even went through this with him, I actually went over the comps with him. I actually just pulled up Realtor.com. You can't do Realtor.com in tough areas, but if you're in retail areas, you can definitely do Realtor.com. All the comps are right there. So I pulled up Realtor.com, and there's a big map. One sold for $145,000, and one sold for $9,900. around him when I pulled it up. Let's click on these.
100?
Let's click on these and let's understand, why did this sell for $145,000? Why is this one for sale for $135,000? Oh, it was a flip. Look at the granite countertops. Look at the backsplash. Look at this. He's like, oh yeah, I don't have any of that. Of course you don't. So your house isn't worth $130,000 today. It could be, but it's not today. It's probably worth somewhere in the $90,000 to $100,000 range today, and we're going to be at 65% of that, of the as is done. That's just the way I say it. He's like, yeah. And when you see somebody shaking their head, I move on. I move on to the next option. You have any questions about our cash offer? Yeah. It doesn't work. I'm like, well, cool. Again, you put yourself in a great position where you have a lot of options. Have you ever thought of renting the house out yourself?
You said this is not a lot of work.
I don't wanna do it.
That was the first.
But you present it. Here's the thing, Marty. You are going to look like a superhero because you're telling them all their options, and you're trying to be honest with them. What? How much is your payment? How much is your mortgage payment? Oh, it's like he has like an equity line of credit. It's like $300 a month. You can rent this thing. He asked me what I could rent it for. You rent this thing for like $900, $950, maybe even $1,000. That's some good cash flow. Put it with a property manager. Have you ever thought about like buying assets? By the way, it's a good way to get somebody on your what? Your buyer's list. You ever thought about buying assets? Buying assets for cash flow? And the great thing about having people on your buyer's list that aren't the typical investor, they're going to pay more.
Yeah.
They're going to pay way more. You can get them a deal at 90%. They think it's incredible. Make sense? Like Lynn, who bought your Pleasant Grove house, the one that you got for 22,000. The reason we were able to get such a huge spread is because he was okay with buying at 85%. So you got to cultivate those relationships too. So here are all his options. Rent it, and then this option may not really work best for you, but you could owner finance it. You start talking about renting it. Get some. Start buying assets and keeping assets and stuff. But you could also owner finance it. You could sell it to someone and get interest on your money. And he asked me to explain that. I'm like, look, I'm glad to explain it. It'd take me a while. I'm just going to give you the bullet points. But in a scenario like this, I think of the options, and this is the key, guys. This is the key. What do you think I ask? What do you think is the key question you ask after you get done explaining the options?
Which option?
Which one sounds best for you?
Which one do you think? Which one of those options works best for you in your situation? Make sure you're not mistaking that with, do any of these sound good to you?
Let's make them choose one.
Totally different question. Which one sounds the best to you? Sounds like it's best for you in your situation. Oh man, I think listing is going to be best for me. I agree. I totally agree. What's your schedule like? This is literally what I said to him. What's your schedule like the rest of the day? I'm home today. Okay, hang on one second. I'm going to make a quick phone call. Call Rob. Say, Rob, can you be out here are you free at 4 o'clock? Can you be out here at 4 o'clock? Great. I'm gonna text you the address and text you the phone number. So when you do something like this, from a marketing standpoint, you can get paid as a marketer on a referral. You're a marketer, and I can pay you a marketing fee through Alabama Cash Deals. So you can't, typically speaking, you cannot do this. You cannot make a referral to a realtor and get paid because you're not a realtor. But as a marketing expense, Alabama Cash Deals already pays 205 Realty on a consistent basis for marketing. And so 205 Realty will pay Alabama Cash Deals a referral fee. Or they're paying them a marketing fee. I'm sorry, yeah, I said that backwards. 205 Realty is paying Alabama Cash Deals already for marketing, for leads. And the money that comes in will give Chase a percentage of that. This is how I do my 3-tiered offer. If you're not on an appointment, I've also done this exact same thing in letter format or in email format, where I explain. That's how I got that house in Springville, my biggest wholesale deal I've ever done. I sent him an email and I said, here are your options. And at the end of the email, I said, which one of these you think works best for you? And he came back to me and said, the cash offer is the one that works best for me.
Because you highlighted with the cash offer, we could close immediately.
Yeah, you want to be honest with
Get all
people.
good negotiation.
You want to be honest with people, and you want to tell people the benefits and the downside to all the options. You with me?
Yes, okay, I get the email with stuff scratched out.
I don't have anything like that. I literally just I type it out.
Okay.
Like, here are the options. Like I'm going over it with you today. What are all the different?
Specific numbers?
What are all the? What's that?
In the email, you gave specific numbers.
Of course.
Okay. MLS,
So-
you could probably get this much.
Of
Cash
course.
offer, I'm gonna ask for this, but close within 2 weeks.
Of course.
We just go explain it,
So,
right?
so what are all the options that you could give someone? You can list it, make a cash offer,
Rent it,
you can rent it.
on the finance.
Okay, all right, now that you don't have anything else on the board, you can owner finance it? What else?
Lease option. Subject to.
Anything else? And then here and here is where you can like get really creative with how you structure these, right? Any questions about this? I give the 3-tiered offer in verbal form
Okay.
every time I do it.
So you just explain it,
Every time.
correct? When you,
So the way when I go on an appointment, I'm talking about them. I'm building rapport. I go and I get a tour of the house with them. At the end of the tour of the house, I say, Mr. Seller, you mind if I take a lap around the house real quick? I just want to look on that exterior. And then I'm going to go to my car. I'm going to figure up some numbers, and then I'll come back in and try to see if we can work something out. That's typically how I do it. So I'll go.
What are you looking for when you are you looking at just the exterior of the house and the air conditioning and that kind of the foundation, just kind of glancing at that? Okay, nothing
It's-
particular.
No, it is particular, but
Gives you a chance to think of the numbers and
Yeah.
get them.
yeah, it gives me a chance to excuse
Yeah.
myself.
Right.
And I want to take a lap around the house by myself
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I just do.
Yeah.
I just
right.
want to be by myself. Gives me a chance to start adding things up
Right,
because I'm typically taking notes. If you guys have been on appointments with me, I'm doing this in my head a lot of times. I encourage you guys to do it with a pad.
Yeah.
For sure. But I'm just taking notes in my head. What is it that needs work? If I find something when I'm with the seller, I said this yesterday on the appointment. If you notice this, let me bring this down. I typically talk about how, like there was moisture in the basement, and I want to tell them that can be a big expense. A lot of times, foundation issues. There's moisture getting in the basement. I was like, I think there's something in that corner. Like we were like in the opposite corner because he was showing me some stuff. I think there's something in the far opposite corner. He's like, oh yeah, how'd you know? I'm like, because we were outside in the front of the house and I saw where there was some erosion in the dirt, and I knew there was going to be something in that corner, and I could smell it too. So I knew there was something down there. So he takes me all the way across in another room in the garage where he's like, oh yeah, there's water getting in right here. And I'm like, that's really not what I was even talking about. And then I looked over here, underneath where the porch was, there's all this black mold. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's what I was looking for. So I'm like, listen, there's nothing to be alarmed about. We went outside and just, I just showed them a couple things that, this is something when you sell it to anyone, even if you're selling it to, put it on the market, if you're selling it to anybody, this is something that's going to have to either get corrected or you're going to have to discount the property based on this. But it looks like it's really not that big of a deal. You need to shore up the gutter system a little bit, and you need to the grade was like this coming up to the house, but then it did this. So you just need to put some fill dirt in right here and build it back up. And the same thing with the underneath the porch. It did this, it was all eroded away. So
I think it's because he took out all that shrubbery, he took out the trees in the yard.
well,
and stuff.
right. So anyway, I try to point out really bad things with the house, but also try to say, hey, this is a great house, and that's just one little
It's
thing.
negotiation
Not that big of a deal. I don't think it's gonna be really that big of a deal, but we'll have to take a look at that. Get somebody out here. But anyway, I take a lap around the house. I go and I try to pull comps. Hopefully, before you're going on the appointment, you're able to pull some data, and then after you do that, then you go in and you talk to the seller. You've already, hopefully by then, kind of gotten a grasp on their motivation. You should understand where they are financially, where they are in their situation, how quickly they need to sell. You've already asked all these questions, and so you can make sure you're giving them the best option. Look, there's a lot of different options. I approach it this way. Look, there's typically a lot of different options, but in your specific case, there's really only a couple options I see here. I could say it that way. This is a little bit tougher area of town. If it's in, so it'd be difficult to list this. Typically, I encourage people to list their property, put it on the MLS, list it with a realtor, because you're typically going to get more even after you pay all the fees. And even though, I'm saying all the bad things, even though you have to pay a lot of fees, and even though you don't know when it's going to sell exactly, you're typically going to get a lot more for it. So that's how I like to say that. But in this area, there's just not a lot of homeowners buying off the MLS in this area. So, the area's fine. There's a lot of investors coming in this area, looking for a lot of rental property in this area. You've probably noticed there are a lot of renters and tenants around you. Oh yeah, there definitely is. So that's how I approach it then. So in my opinion, going with an investor, selling to an investor, you're probably going to get the most amount of money for it. Selling to an investor, and most investors are buying it around 50% of what it's worth. And that's the way I typically, and that's if I'm forced to name a number, and I don't even like to name a number. I'm always asking up front, did you have a number in mind? I always ask that before I go out and take my lap around the house. By the way, did you have a number in mind? Is there a number you felt like you needed to get? Is that number negotiable? I'll try to get them to bid against themselves a couple of times, but just asking just basic questions. Scott Jelinek, there's a great podcast from about January or February of this past year, where Scott talks about, he's coming to speak in November, by the way, at Alleria, but he talks about what he says and how he handles appointments. Great stuff.
Spell his last name.
Jelinek. Questions?
Okay, you had mentioned before you go out, you'll take you'll pull some comps and things of that nature.
Zillow.
Thank you.
It's not perfect, but it gives
But
you a
it gives you
baseline.
yeah, definitely.
I look at Zillow. I do want to see what the tax appraised value is, just to know what it is in case the seller tries to use that against me. I want to know what it is beforehand. I just try Realtor.com is a great resource if it's retail. What else? Is this helpful?
Yeah. Is the Pope Catholic? It is for me.
You can ask all the questions. It doesn't have to be one.
What is a $40,000 house?
Cash or owner finance.
Yes, because that wouldn't, all that wouldn't be up there.
Correct. Good, that's a great point.
I
These
answered
are-
the question, I'm sorry.
These, yeah, for some reason Darius is like really,
Quiet today.
yeah.
It's not.
You're in the morning.
I'm in the learning stage.
Well, he's absorbing everything.
These are all the options that could be available to, like when you go on any appointment. But all of these options are not gonna be ones that,
Available on
they're not gonna fit
everywhere.
the situation.
Right.
You know, Darius' question was, what do you do on a $40,000 house? Are you gonna offer to list it?
No.
Depending on who they are, if they own it and they live in it and it's trashed, am I gonna suggest that they rent it?
No.
No. Heck no. Owner financing, I don't wanna take over a note in those areas. Probably don't. Lease option would be like I wouldn't even say it. It would just have to kind of come up. Cash or owner financing.
Yeah.
What's that? I say it like this, you know, on a $40,000 house, you know, look, it's gonna be, you know, our offer's gonna be we're gonna be pretty far away.
We've already said that to somebody.
And I keep my mouth shut after that. Like, we're gonna be pretty far apart. And they can say one of two things. All right, have a nice day.
Have a nice day.
Or
What can you do for
How
or
far apart?
or how,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, what could
You
you?
won't insult me, go ahead, tell me.
Yeah, well,
Right.
you know, it's bad. It's gonna be really bad. It's gonna be really, really bad. Like, what do you think I would say? Where do you think I would be?
Yeah, throwing it back. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, definitely.
I don't know, 15,000.
No,
Yeah.
it's-
Yeah. See, that's why I'm glad I asked that question, because it's going to be really bad. So let's think about some other options. I don't even say it. Let's think about some other options you might have. Have you thought about renting it out? Like, I'll say some stuff that I know is stupid, that I know there's no way they can do it,
Yeah.
just to say it and see what they'd say.
There are other options.
You know, have you thought about renting it out? Have you thought about fixing it up yourself and selling it? Oh, I don't have any money. I already knew that.
Yeah, right.
I already know what they're gonna say. I already know they can't do it. I'm like, oh, well, what else do you think you could do? Like, look, I guess I'm just gonna have to call somebody else. I'm like, they're gonna say the same thing to you I'm saying.
Yeah.
I know all these guys. They say the same thing I say. It's just a tough part of town. Needs a lot of work. You just don't have a whole lot of options. And then if he keeps pressing me, I'm like, what do you think realistically is the best you can do? He already knows I can't do 15. What do you think realistically your best number would be? I'd say that to him. And I just keep getting them to bid. I've never named the numbers. Keep getting them to bid against themselves. And I keep hammering home the point, almost passive aggressively, that they don't have any other options. This is their only option. That's how I do it. And that's how I get those deals for like $2,000, $1,000, $2,000. What else? You guys want to move on to the third thing on here?
Yeah.
Forgot what it was. Owner financing. Okay. Well, so this is just really, yeah. So this last part, this is like I don't even know how to teach this because this is so no elementary. No, this is the opposite. This is like graduate level stuff. Like this can go like in any direction. Like this is where like Marty, you could structure your deal in 10 or 15 or 20 different ways. Like I can't sit here and teach you one way to do this. I can give you the base because it's all negotiable.
Yeah, and I think that's more of my question was, here I am with this.
What's the
Gosh,
best
you
way
got-
to do it?
Yeah, guys, give me some, because it's not in stone yet, but it will be soon, as soon
Okay.
as I.
So I think the best way to do this then is let's just actually have like case study scenarios.
Yeah.
Like, because there's no way to like I can give you a case study on some stuff that I've done,
Right.
but that's not the only way to do it. There's
Right.
so many different ways that you can structure this, and the more and by the way, you're not going to be able to do this right off the bat. Like you need to do some wholesale deals. You need to do some regular deals first before you can get comfortable doing some of this really creative stuff where, and I say this tongue in cheek I don't care about politics, I don't care what your political affiliation is because it doesn't matter, but there is a great book called The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump from the late 80s, early 90s, where he structures deals so incredibly, and that's what really made him the businessman he was, because he knew how to structure a deal. So that's the same thing that's going on here, is you can structure these things in a million different ways. Give me the circumstances. So let's get all the facts and let's try to figure out the best way.
What do you want?
Let's do the second one, the one from the guy from South Alabama.
Okay, all right. So we've got a house that market value says 98.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Single family residence in Pleasant Grove.
Yep.
ARV is 98.
Yep, I'll give you all the street.
Let's just say 100K.
98.
Okay, let's say 100K.
Okay. I have sold 3 houses down like last month for 103.
Okay, so okay, we got the ARV.
Okay. And so what else? Ask me. What do you need?
It's been vacant for 2 years.
2 to 3 years.
Okay, so we need to know all these things. Vacant for 2 to 3
It
years.
had a renter in it for 1 year. Prior to that, there's been nobody in that house for about 10 years.
What's the repairs?
10,000.
Okay. What's the motivation of the seller? They're open to doing something creative.
They're open to doing something creative because they do not live in town, do not want to come back into town, want to take it off of them so that they don't have to deal with the
Okay.
house.
Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. Did you make a cash? How did you get to this? How did you get to this point with something creative? Did you make the cash offer? How'd the conversation go? Just so
I
everybody
did not
knows.
make a cash offer
Why?
because he owes too much. He owes too much.
Was he owed?
He owes 80.
Oh, you didn't tell me that, or I don't remember that.
He owes 80. He has a mortgage on it. He's been paying on it for 12 years. This is the
There's
12th year.
22 years left on the mortgage.
Yep. He's been paying on it since '06.
Okay.
And he bought it for 105, and he owes right at 80, 82, somewhere around there.
How much is the payment?
$976 a month.
That's
960, excuse me, at 7.25%.
fixed.
960?
Fixed rate or
Fixed.
variable?
960.
Okay.
He bought it in '06. He bought it during that. It was his first house. He didn't know what he was doing.
That's PITI, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so he's paying taxes and insurance in there with it. He said it was lower when he first got it and it got adjusted up to that.
Are the taxes? It's non-homestead, right? Or is it homestead?
It's not homestead.
What's
So
homestead?
okay, so homestead means you live in the house, you've gone to the courthouse and shown them that you bought this house and you're gonna be living in the house.
Owner occupied. If it's owner occupied, you get a discount on your
And
taxes.
you get about half. So his
Hey.
taxes are $1,484.
How much?
$1,484 a year.
What about insurance?
It's being paid for, but I don't have any documentation
Um,
of that.
well, the
It's in
question-
escrow.
The question is it a vacant? Do they know it's vacant? Is it a vacant policy? Because
They
he's gonna
don't-
be paying double if it's
I
vacant.
don't know if they know it's
Okay,
vacant.
so
or
we
not.
definitely need to try to figure out because we might be able to get the insurance number lower.
Okay,
Okay.
all right,
Okay. So now I understand.
okay.
So the ultimate question is, we've got all the information. There might be some other information that I might ask you, but I think I've got it all. We've got all this information, and Marty basically said there's no way, like my cash offer is going to be like 10K, 165, 50. My cash offer is going to be like 50,
Maybe.
and you owe 80.
Yeah.
At best, my MAR,
Yeah.
Oh,
my
yeah.
max. My
Yeah,
max is 50. You owe 80. Are you willing to come to the closing table with $30,000?
no.
Okay, but I'm gonna ask that first.
Yeah.
No, he might. I mean, he might if I asked him, but I didn't ask him that. We didn't even talk about
That's fine.
doing that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. But,
But that's-
just I want to give people their options.
Yeah.
Here are your options. You know, option number one is cash. It's gonna be
And
50K max.
I will say this also,
Um,
the guy knows enough that he was kind of leading the conversation with what he was willing to do before I even asked.
Okay, and he
In
says
this
what?
particular scenario. hey, I've got this mortgage on here, I'm willing to pay it to get it down to a price where you can afford it. Hey, I've got, so it was, I know the house is in this condition, and I know you gotta put the money into it to fix it. I've got money, I just don't want to give the house back to the bank, and I don't wanna have to pay it off immediately of what I owe. So he's given me information.
So I would approach it like this. Cause Marty, listen to me. He's got some money.
He's got a little bit of money in the bank,
Okay, this is what I would ask him.
okay?
Would you rather?
And he is motivated to go ahead and sell it, by the way. Even though he said, I'll be happy to, that was his, not me asking, I'll be happy to pay for the next 5, 6, 7 years to get it down to where you can afford the house.
Did you do the math? What's it gonna be?
I don't have it with me, but it was close to 50. It was like in the high 40s.
Over how many years? How many years is he willing to, or how many?
6 to 7.
Okay.
He was willing to pay
So-
it, so that was, it sounded really good for me. At my
All right, so we gotta think about this is a lot of information here,
There
and
is.
we've gotta think about what's the best way to make the most amount of money.
Right.
Right?
And I don't know the best way, not as why we both directions
So,
yet.
but there's two directions you could go here, and I don't think either one are wrong,
Okay,
because I think you could do well with either of them.
okay,
It depends on, do you want long-term or do you want short-term
okay.
money? So let's think of this in terms of us first,
Okay.
and then we'll how do we present this down? So for us, like when I get all the information like this, I want to think about it. I want to try to figure out what's the best way to make the most amount of money. Just like we did on that Pleasant Grove house that you got for $22,000. If we flip it, are we going to make more than if we
Right.
wholesale it?
Right.
Versus
right.
the time, versus the work and all this,
Right.
all the risk and all that stuff.
Right.
So we want to think about all the situations. So the very first thing that comes to my mind is he's got some money. So will he come to the closing table with $30K? So wholesale it.
To get rid of it, yes, I think he would if we
Okay.
approached it.
Okay, so for us, the quickest way to make the most amount of money is going to be to wholesale it if he comes to the closing table with 35K, because we could probably, it's a, what is it, 3-2?
It is,
Garage?
yes, one car,
Um,
full basement.
is it brick?
No, it's actually concrete block.
It's concrete
And-
block.
The
Yeah,
whole house is blocked?
uh-huh,
All the way around?
All the way around.
uh-huh,
Okay, full basement, unfinished?
yes, correct.
Okay,
The addition of the garage is not block, it is vinyl siding.
is it attached to the house?
It is.
Okay. Your 10,000 number, where'd you get that number?
I just had, because I've only had it for a week, I had a friend of mine who knows about it. Hey, come by and look at it before I can get somebody over here. It only needs flooring and some ceiling. That's all it needs, that we can tell. I'm having the power turned on Friday. So, just from what we can tell just by looking at it, because it's a brand new kitchen. It's been, you almost don't even need to paint it. That's how new it looks. But you do need some ceiling redone because they did a really bad job, and all the flooring, no hardwood underneath, all the carpet and stuff needs to be replaced. Other than that, the house looks like it's great until I can turn the power on Friday. And be able to check things out, turn the water on and all that. And we went in the basement and walked up and looked at everything, at there's not any, there was a previous damage in the bathroom, but there's not any issues, no issues with the roof. Roof looks really good. It was replaced in 2011.
Okay, so if we wholesale it, we're gonna need to get it for, I think you can sell it for like 52. So you need to get it for 40. He's gotta come to the closing table with 40K.
I don't know if he would, but okay. I will ask.
Just write down the options.
Okay.
And I'm not asking you to ask him right now.
Okay.
We wanna try to figure out what our options are.
Okay,
So wholesale it to make 10K. That's, to me, if I had to choose any of the options, that's the option I would take. That's what I would do. I
okay.
can't speak for you, it's your deal.
No,
But
no, I understand.
I would take $10,000 if he would agree to come to the closing table with cash.
Okay,
That's option number one for
Okay.
us.
all right.
Because all we're trying to do right now is trying to figure out what can we do to make the most amount of money the quickest?
Right,
Okay?
right.
Wholesale it is obviously going to be the answer to that question 100% of the time. It's just a matter of can you structure a deal to make it happen.
Okay, all
Okay,
right.
so that's that. He's got to come to the closing table. What else could we do? What are some other options that we could do to make the most amount of money with this property?
He said, well, I heard it say that he
Fix it,
would
flip?
come. I heard it say that he would come with 7 years. Was
He
it
would
7
hold it,
years?
he'll pay
Okay.
it, he'll pay it for 7. We are in negotiations right now, definitely
Okay.
for 5 years, but he said he
So-
would go longer if needed to get the price down.
So we're gonna go through an option scenario where he pays the mortgage. So this is where you gotta actually
Correct.
get your calculator out.
Okay, and if that's the case, we owe 62 at that point.
Now, we figured up with him paying the mortgage for 5 more years, he would cap it down to about 70. He'd get about $10,000 paid
Okay,
down on the mortgage.
Okay, hang on. That's not what we're calculating right now. We'll get to that in a second.
Oh,
This is what I want to calculate. His payment, you said, is $960.
960, correct.
Okay, so I want to multiply 960 times how many months?
60.
That's 5 years. 72.
72.
72 would be 6 years. How many months did you say you would do it?
84.
Up to 7. So I'm going to multiply 960 by 84 months. This dude is going to pay $80,000 over the course of
Yeah,
7 years
yeah,
in payments.
yeah.
Mr. Seller, here are your options. You can die a slow death.
Gotcha.
You can get paper cut to death
Sure.
and lose $80,000, or you can come to the closing table with 40 today, and we'll take the property off your hands. Because my cash offer, I know we haven't talked about this yet, but my cash offer, based on the condition it's in, the fact that it's been vacant for so many long, it's in good condition, but it has been vacant, it's going to need some things. My cash offer, the best I can do is going to be $40,000. If you owe 80 today, you have to come to the closing table with 40. But and I'm glad. Listen, Mr. Seller, I'm glad to do the option deal where you pay the mortgage for 7 years and I go in, I do some fix up and I rent it out and I make some cash flow. I'm glad to do that. I'm just trying to make sure that I've presented you. I want to make sure I've done my job
Right.
and make sure I presented you with all the options that could work best for you. And if $1,000 a month for the next 7 years is something that you are okay with, because you can, it's more affordable to have
Do it at
$1,000.
$1,000
Yeah, $1,000 a time. It's more affordable to do that today versus one big chunk. Then I get it. That's fine. But I would be.
Save you 40,000.
I would be, not doing my job if I didn't at least tell you that you could save literally half by just coming to the closing table and just let me buy it for $40,000, because that's going to be my cash offer.
Okay.
So you
Does that make sense, Morty?
Yes, absolutely it does. I didn't even think about it.
'Cause
Yeah.
You're welcome, Derek.
I'd have made that 8K.
You would have made that 80K?
Yeah, because that's exactly what he's going to give you. He's giving you 80K over the span of 7 years.
Yeah.
If you rent it out
With interest. With
Yeah.
interest. That's not in principal. It's only about 30K in principal. But
if you rented it out.
And if I rent it out, which will be the next option in a minute.
So listen, you're right, but it's risk reward.
Right.
There's
right,
downside
right,
to
right.
it too.
Of course.
Do you think that thing's gonna be rented 100% of the time?
No.
Do you think when she gets some tenants in that they're gonna do something? She's gonna have to put the 10K in it up front, and she's gonna have to repair things as she goes.
Okay, that's all true. However, let me throw this.
Just throwing out all the scenarios. Yeah.
The other thing that I can tell you is that I'm looking at someone now who's willing to do all the repairs up front as an option, a lease option, to purchase the house for his family.
Gotcha.
So, I like to further confuse things.
No, you're not further
I just
confusing
find
things.
people like that.
No, you're not further confusing things. Here's the problem. Here's the downside
Okay,
to that. That sounds great on paper, and it rarely works out.
okay.
Because anytime someone is trading work for a place to live, it never works. It's just like
Okay,
renting to a
well, I
family
was gonna
member.
still take money now. I was still collecting rent,
I get it.
but the fact that it needs flooring and ceiling, it's gonna need it if he's there or not.
How much?
So,
How much down payment are you getting? How much option money are you getting?
I haven't had that discussion with him yet, but it was not gonna be the work. It was gonna be the work plus $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. It was, yeah, I'm gonna take.
I
money.
would.
I'm
I
gonna
would take it off the
money.
back end.
Okay,
What do you mean?
The sales price.
Okay.
That I agree. Like if I'm gonna sell it on a lease option, his option price is gonna be 100. If it's gonna be 102,000 or whatever the ARV is, it's gonna be 100,000 minus
the
10,000 in repairs. So I'll sell it to you for 90K on the back end.
Okay.
I'm not gonna take less money up front because I've got to protect myself.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't gonna take less money.
Marty, you can definitely do all that. What, are you gonna check their credit?
Absolutely, I would do.
How are you gonna do that?
I don't know yet. See, I'm just,
Okay.
this is where I am. This
Great.
all happened within
No,
a.
that's good. No, it's good, and you're
It's
you're
just-
entering the part of your real estate career where you're no longer dealing with just investors, and now you're starting to deal with the public, okay, the consumer, okay. This is where, and I'm not telling you not to do this. I'm telling you this is where we got to be super meticulous. Anytime you're putting someone in a property, I would give it to a professional, or I would seek the advice of a professional.
Absolutely.
Right, for sure.
I
Before
agree.
you're, putting anybody in any property, especially in an area. I'm not talking bad about Pleasant Grove, but it's in an average area of town. Okay. It's
Sure,
not- it's
absolutely.
not terrible.
Yeah, I totally agree with
Well,
that.
the point I'm trying to make is your tenant base is going to be
Different.
average.
I know.
Not above average, maybe not below average, maybe a little below average, but they're going to be average. You just have to be very careful.
I understand that,
Okay, cool.
and that's the reason why we're having the discussions
Definitely.
today, is because I am
Definitely.
going
With
in that direction.
Totally
Yeah.
with you. Just want to make sure we're on the same page.
We're on the same page, but now at the same time though, I'm gonna eventually get a rental portfolio.
Totally.
So while I'm looking at this, obviously my mind is going, oh, look, I can get somebody in there, either it being a lease option or either it being a rental. And I'm getting it, and I got somebody else making the mortgage payment while I'm collecting the money. And so I'm looking, you
So
know.
this is the question I would ask myself if I'm you.
Right,
Is this something that I would want long term?
to be able to keep
To
the
hold.
house.
To hold.
It would be a house I would keep as a rental, yeah,
Long term.
yeah.
Okay.
It is one, yeah.
That's what you have to ask yourself. Because if it's not, then I would
No,
leave it there as an
If it
option.
wasn't, I would wholesale it.
Okay.
And that would be my first thought.
Totally. What was your question?
I didn't have one.
Oh, you did, but maybe you
But
forgot.
it was answered, yeah.
Oh, okay, good,
Yeah.
great. Okay, so we're going through this again, fastest, quickest way to make money. Obviously, there are other variables here. You want to build a rental portfolio, and this might be a good first place to start because you're getting in cheap. Totally with you. Let's just go through all the options.
Yep.
Okay, so option scenario, in this case, if he's gonna sit here and pay the mortgage for 7 years, you don't have to worry about that. Definitely getting limited power of attorney. So we're making the payment, make sure the payment gets made. He's having to pay us. If we put someone else in it, they're gonna have to pay that. You're not gonna have cash flow because you're not gonna be able to charge them more than $1,000 a month. Because that's market rent. That's above market rent.
You've lost me on the cash flow part, why am I not gonna have cash flow?
Because the mortgage is.
But he's paying.
He's paying the mortgage though.
Yeah, but you hadn't paid him.
No, hold on. Hang on. Hold on. This is a different scenario. I'm just rewinding the whole lease option thing. I was about
Okay.
to tie it back together.
Okay.
Everybody hang on.
Okay.
You're right and you're right. Hang on.
No, you just lost me, was
Let's
all.
not. Okay. So if we're coming back here to the sandwich lease option, we want to look at our 3 profit centers. So if this is something we're going to do, we want to do a lease option in this scenario. I don't know that that's what you're going to do. I'm just talking broadly right now. Okay.
All right.
So just hang on. There's 3 profit centers. There's cash flow. There's the option consideration money, which is the down payment. Don't say that. Yep. and then there's the equity piece. So if she
Right.
sells it for, in this case, sells it for 100,000 to them, but she's getting it for, she paid the loan down to what, 60 or 70, whatever it is.
I think
We
it's-
need to do that real math,
I
because
think it's 60.
I think your math is wrong, and I think
No, I did
your-
the payment on 970, which is only, I mean,
Let's do that math real quick, just so we have that number. It's definitely get his amortization schedule.
Yeah, I got it at the house. He was paying, when we did it, it was about $10,000 for him to pay it down for
5 years?
5 years.
Basically.
Yeah, it's right at $10,000.
60.
Give or take 1,000, because we don't know
Understand.
exactly where he is on
Understand.
that. But we took the date that he bought it,
What was his loan amount, do you remember?
105
oh, see, I did 100.
was his loan amount. And we took the date he bought it, September 1st is when it was recorded, as to 2006, and we ran it from there, and we ran 60 months, and backed it out of an amortization, and it's right at 10,000 that he was paying down. So, and he is aware, because he and I had the conversation.
That's awesome.
Look, you're only gonna have this much paid. We ran it the night before, the day, that day, because he was showing the house to one other person. I went home, and then he called me and he said, okay, that guy's gone, go ahead and meet me.
Before that's 228.
Let's talk. So we ran the amortization while he was getting with the other guy.
Payment was 61,760.
Oh,
And a
right.
payment of 960 or 970, which is $10 more.
Gotcha.
So in the neighborhood.
All right, perfect. Okay. I just want to do that in my head. Just
So in order to get him, he'd have to pay it, you know. And he
So-
also said he knew that that there was a big difference. He said, how else can I pay that down quicker? And see, the only thing I need to tell him was, you know, you could throw an
Refinance.
extra $1,000, he's not gonna refinance it. You could throw an extra $1,000 toward the principal of it.
But if you refinance it, you could actually, if you're getting 1,000, he's gonna pay it anyway. If you refinance it.
Hang on, you can't do that. Just, I understand where you're going, you can't do that. And I'll explain why. Write it down, I'll explain why in a second. All right, so in Marty's scenario, there's gonna be roughly a 60K balance after 7 years.
Right.
Which means it's gonna leave her about how much in equity? Between 60,000 and 100K, which was what she would sell it for.
Mhm.
By the way, in 7 years, do you think it's gonna be worth 100,000?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
Probably gonna, even if we have a dip in the economy, it's still, that's why it's very important in your option contract with your potential tenant buyer, that you say appraised value at time of sale, and you can even say, if he does some work, say appraised value at time of sale minus the $10,000 in repairs.
Okay.
You could even say something like that, but there's gonna be at least $40,000 worth of equity here. She is gonna have, her scenario, she's gonna have cash flow, but in most scenarios, most scenarios you should have cash flow. If you were to do this as is, where you make the payment for them, and the payment was $960 or something, let's just call it $1,000. Market rent is no more than $1,000 over there, $950 to $1,000. So there's no cash flow in a normal lease option scenario. So I'd definitely be cautious of doing a deal like this with no cash flow because you have no buffer.
Yeah.
I would still do the deal if I got a really good option consideration amount, and or there was a lot of equity like this. There's 40K in equity. So I'd give up some short-term cash flow for some long-term gains.
Excellent.
But I have if he's gonna pay the mortgage every month, so that's basically Marty's at 0, and then the tenant buyer pays her 1,000.
Correct.
Isn't she just plus 1,000 every month?
She is.
Okay, well you made it sound like she has no cash flow, so I was kind of lost.
So I prefaced all that by saying in a normal lease option
Yeah.
scenario,
Yeah,
in a normal lease option scenario, you are going to have to make that payment.
right.
So
Not
if
paying him anything.
So if you're negotiating where he's paying you the 1,000
Right.
and you make the payment, and the tenant buyer's paying you 1,000, you're getting 2,000 a month, and you only 1,000's going out. So in her scenario, she's got 60K, 40K in equity. She's got cash flow of roughly $1,000 a month. And what else is she gonna have?
Well, no, if he's paying principal and
Option.
interest
You
and
have an option.
taxes out of his.
Option consideration.
Your option consideration money, so
You're gonna
I
get-
was gonna say I had nothing else going out, but yeah, I'm like, option consideration is gonna be.
So,
whatever,
Marty has
5,000.
3 profit centers in this deal, okay? She's got potentially 40K in equity, but hold on, does she really have 40K in equity?
No, I
No.
just sit and wait on that.
Yeah.
So here's where you have to kind of weigh or understand what's going on here. Is she gonna have this 40? When would she have this 40K in
In
equity?
7 years.
In 7 years.
And I,
Ideally, is this house gonna be sold before 7 years?
Probably, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
If she doesn't, if you're doing an option with somebody on the back end, on the sale end, then you're doing that option for no more than 24 months. I would say 18 months. Give them 18 months to buy. If they can't buy in 18 months, I don't keep them in there as a tenant. If it's me,
Okay.
I want to sell it. I want the equity. Or you could just structure it like I did my Irondale house. If you just want, but it sounds like to me that your tenant buyer that you already had in mind, he wants to buy it.
he wants to buy it,
Right. So if he wants to buy it, he gets 18 months.
Okay,
You can put him in touch with some people to help him build his credit or fix his credit or whatever, because eventually he's going to get his own loan and cash the seller out and cash you out.
okay.
So in that scenario, in 18 months, how much is going to be paid down from the equity?
Not very much.
Not very much at
Not
all.
very much at all.
And how much is it going to appreciate?
In 18 months, it may not.
It may not. It may depreciate a little
Yeah,
bit.
it
Right.
may.
So there, in this scenario, in an 18-month scenario, there's not very much equity, but there's still enough. There's
Yeah,
still going to be
18
there's still going to be
grand.
20 there's still going to be 20K in equity at least, right? Should be.
Plus
In 18
the 18.
months.
78,000.
Yeah, there should be 20K in
There's still
there.
going to be 20K in equity. It's only going to go down 1,000 or 2.
18 grand.
You're going to have cash flow in 18 months. How much cash flow does she have?
18.
18,000.
Or 18,000.
18.
All right. And consideration money.
And then option consideration money. How much is she going to get?
35.
Maybe at least 5,000.
How much?
5. Just maybe 5, only because I don't know what I'm gonna get. I
Okay.
don't know what I can ask.
All right, so let me ask you this question.
Minimum.
Listen, if she gets option consideration money, and they exercise their option, does this go against the purchase price?
It should, it should,
Yes.
Totally.
yeah.
Yep.
Because now your equity.
So the 5K, the option consideration money,
Doesn't count.
it doesn't, because you're counting it up here. You can't count it twice.
Yeah,
You guys all follow that?
Yeah.
Make sure you guys all follow that. So in this scenario, in 18 months, she could make as much as 38,000 on this deal.
In 18 months.
Is that better than making 10,000 in
wholesale.
30 days?
Well, it depends on if you're willing
Depends on what
to,
It depends.
it depends. And also, I don't even know this guy's even gonna show up for the appointment. This is where I am right now today.
Totally.
We don't even know that we're gonna be able to go that route.
So let's go over another option then, because this may end up being the best option. This is another option. This may actually end up netting you the most amount of money.
All right,
Don't sell it to someone on an option. Rent it out
okay.
for $1,000. You're completely just gonna lease it because it's all profit. But in that scenario, who has to do the repairs?
I do.
You do. So in this scenario, let's say you do it for 5 years, because he's gonna give you 7, right? Or is he's gonna give you at least 7 maybe?
He would give me that if we asked for it. I think he actually would go for the $30,000 to get out of it and not be in this marriage for 7 years, you know what I'm saying?
Right, so we're going over all of it.
Yeah.
So this is where we go back to him. That's what I would do if it's me,
Yeah,
but
I will. No, I will.
you
I'll
do.
give him all the scenarios, let him
So-
choose.
So for you, in this scenario, this is how you're gonna make the most amount of money. Now, that doesn't mean it's the best thing to do, necessarily, because everybody's gonna be different. Some people need cash, 10,000. Are you following me, Corey?
Yes.
Some people want the $10,000, bam, hit, move on to the next one. Because this is gonna be a long process. 5 years. 5 years, I'm gonna find a tenant, I'm gonna lease it. I'm gonna lease it for $1,000 a month.
That's
For
60K.
5 years is how much?
60K.
Yep, that's right. Is he making the repairs or you're making the repairs?
I mean, I would make the.
You're gonna make the, I'm talking about,
$10,000.
not just that,
The lease.
the ongoing maintenance.
I get, well, I'm gonna have somebody to do it, yeah.
No, but you're gonna be responsible for it.
Yes, I'm gonna be
Okay,
responsible.
alright, so we're gonna have, let's figure in 5% for maintenance
Okay.
per year.
Okay.
And then let's figure in our 10K off the top. Okay, what is 5% of $12,000? Should be 1,200, 600, should be $600. What's 600 times 5? Should be 3,000. So you're probably gonna have ongoing maintenance of roughly 3K for the whole 5 years. And you're probably gonna have, it sounds like 10K in upfront repair costs.
Yes,
Okay? So that leaves us with what? 47?
correct?
You see how we're analyzing all this?
Yeah.
How much did we make in this scenario? 38. Only took 18 months. This scenario, 47K, it took 5 years. But we're not done. Are we done?
I guess not.
We're not done.
Because then you can lease option.
This is the best part. Better than that. At the end of 5 years, how much is owed on the property? Probably 65. Let's just say 65,000 is going to be owed. What's it worth?
100, maybe 100.
So maybe 100. So let's just say 100. Let's just pretend let's pretend we go into a little bit of a dip and then we come back and we're going to be even.
Okay.
Let's just play conservative. How much equity is that?
35.
35.
You have 35,000 in equity as well, right?
Mhm.
What could you do at this point?
Sell it.
Do you own it? You don't own it yet.
No, but you could buy
You
it.
could buy it, get a loan on it, buy it for cash maybe. Hopefully, you can buy it. Go ahead and buy the thing for cash. You're going to fix it back up. You're probably going to have another 5K in fix up because the tenant left. So this number's going to come down to 42. Follow there? So you're going to have to fix it up once they leave. You're going to have something to do.
Yes.
We could either put it on the market, we could wholesale it, or we could buy it ourselves with cash.
It's a rental property?
Are we in it less than 85%?
Yes.
We can buy it for cash. We can put a tenant in there, and then we can refi all of our money back out.
I'm
You guys following?
I'm following.
Refi all our money back out, and now we have a house with a mortgage on it. And we have a house, we have a rental property that he paid down. The other guy's cashed out. We now own it. It's in our name.
Mhm.
All the while, made an extra $42,000.
And that happened to be our the first thing we talked about when I found the house was to rent it and to do the 10,000. We've already arranged to get the 10,000 to do that ourselves, to put a renter in there, but ran across somebody who said, hey, we might want to buy it, and that's the reason why that scenario came up. But yeah, that sounds, yeah, that sounds good.
You guys see the power in options?
Yeah.
Do a lot of cool things with
Yeah,
options.
the way I see it overall, Brian, is that when you meet with the people, you show them you have a vested interest in what's best for them. Because of the residual effect of business down the road, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. It really does work. But the more of these you get under your belt, the next one's easier and easier. But there's a myriad of ways. It just depends on the situation. And you've got to be able to figure out which is the best way, depending on the situation that the buyer's in. Correct?
Totally.
So which way would you go if it was your deal?
You got it.
My numbers are right here. My creativity.
If you're just starting out.
So
What
this,
would you do versus
So-
right now?
so this is where it comes back to. When I first got into real estate, and I was taking all those rich dad classes, I took a creative finance class through Rich Dad Education. All the rest of them were really bad. This one was the best class I took. I asked the guy one question. If you had to sum up this entire class, or if you had to sum up real estate investing with one nugget, what's the most important thing to keep in mind? What's the most important thing? You know what he said to me? The most important thing
Return on investment.
It's the most important thing. There's another guy who taught another class, and he qualified this a little bit, and I love what he said about this, because in real estate investing, the most important thing is, if you're investing money, period,
Mm-hmm.
you have to know your return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's critical.
Yeah.
It's the only thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have any money, then this doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything.
Right.
So that's all that matters in the beginning if you don't have anything. Who cares about this? I don't even have anything to get a return on.
Right.
The only thing I have something to get a return on is my time.
Right.
I don't have any money.
So it comes
I don't have an investment to get a return on. All I care about is making money.
Right.
So someone asked me which one's the better one to do. It depends.
Depends on where you are in your business.
Do you need money or do you need a return on your investment? What do you need the most? If you need a return on your investment, a return on your time, if that's more important to you, then I think that we all agree that this is the best scenario where you're going to get the most amount of money back.
Right.
Right? Number 3, the second option.
Right.
The second option. But if you need money
Wholesale.
You know, so.
and you need $10,000,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah. No, the number 1, wholesaler.
You're up against.
Yep.
Okay.
Makes sense? What would I do? I would definitely do the last one. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
But I'm not you. So everybody's not in the same situation I'm in.
That's right, that's exactly right. Okay, Brian, I'm gonna remind you of our phone call at 3.
Okay, so you need, you just need to figure out which one you want to do. You need to figure out, do you even want to broach this subject with him? If you do,
Yeah,
you know how to kind of go through it with
Yeah.
him. And then whatever he wants to do, if you can call him before 3, and then we can talk about it at 3.
Are you gonna even offer him the wholesale thing now, or are you gonna come over with
no, I'm gonna talk to him about that. I don't know that I will get